Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to some more StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void. Now if there's one question that I get a lot when it comes to StarCraft 2 is Lowko, how do I improve in the game? And my obvious answer to that has always been to simply play the game. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't actually play the game, so they won't be improving either, right? But for those of you that do play the game, I usually get the follow-up question of what should I be practicing when I'm actually in game? Should I be going for build order practice? Should I be going for like unit composition practice? Should I be, working with my timing attacks? Like, what should I actually be practicing for? And that is a great question. Now, I am convinced that there is one aspect of Zerg that you need to master in order to be a high-level Zerg player, and that is trying to balance the amount of workers that you can get away with before making any kind of army. And the idea behind that is, if you get a worker to mine for a longer amount of time, obviously it is going to be bringing in more resources. If you think about a drone, it mines for about 0.8 minerals a second. If you imagine a drone being on the battlefield for 2 minutes longer, that drone is gonna, reel in about 100 more minerals than the drone that wouldn't have been, right? Now, on its very basis, that is what you're trying to figure out with pretty much all Zerg strategies. So what you're looking for is to try and make as many workers as you possibly can without losing the game. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this match right here, some of you may be aware, I've gotten a new account that I'm gonna be playing only random on, and obviously with random I also do get Zerg. And this is a Zerg versus Protoss that is a pretty clear example on how big the advantage is if you manage to squeeze out as many workers as you possibly can. Now, I'm sure that I am by no means a master in this aspect either, okay? There's a lot of practice that goes into this. I've been playing this game for years and I'm not even remotely close to doing it perfectly. If you look at the Korean pros in particular, they get away with a crazy amount of workers with little army, and part of that is due to their micro being really good, like they don't need a lot of army in order to defend against different kinds of aggression, but also they're just really on top of their macro, so they're really squeezing out as many workers as possible. So one thing you're trying to figure out is how many drones can I get away with, and when should I be making army, and when should I be making workers. In general, if you are not certain when you should be making units and when you should be making army, just simply make drones all the time. At some point, you will go up against a Protoss player or a Terran player or a Zerg player for that matter, who will kill you, who will just simply beat you. Watch that replay and figure out when you should have started making army instead. Now, there's a couple of guidelines for when you should be making army, but that is the main thing you're trying to achieve. Don't worry too much about the short-term losses. Try and figure out how you could be winning again with the same strategy, but, in a more dominant fashion in the future. In Zerg vs Protoss, it is pretty clear when the Zerg can be droning up. There's basically like a list of Protoss build orders that they can be going for, and once you figure out what builds your opponent is going for, or more importantly, the ones that he isn't going for, you can sort of guesstimate how many workers you can get away with. Now, in this particular match, I will scout out that my opponent is going for a Stargate. And at that point, it is pretty clear to me that he is going for Stargate units, and therefore he is not going to be having a whole lot on the ground. So as long as I make defenses that are good against the Stargate units, I will be able to basically just make as many workers as I possibly can without losing the game. And that is what you're always trying to figure out. So in this particular match, you will see me drone stupidly greedy, and I'm trying to be as greedy as I possibly can. In general though, if you're not certain how many workers you should be making, I recommend over-making them and then losing the match, going back into the replay and figuring out when you should have started making army instead. It's one of the easiest things to do, and while it may lose you some ladder points in the short term, I think it is going to make you play far better in the long term. Now, that isn't to say that build orders and whatnot are not going to be important. I mean, they're still very crucial if you want to be improving, as well as like scout timings, as well as timing attacks and all these kind of things. But it's really important that you focus on this basic mechanic first. If you figure out, and I'm convinced about this, if you figure out how many workers you can get away with, you will be able to reach Master League for certain. Like, there's no way you shouldn't be Master League. It's easy to obsess over, say, like unit composition and army types and whatnot, when in reality, it really doesn't matter in a lot of scenarios. I mean, in this game, I decided to go for, I'm gonna pause the game for just a second, by the way, but in this particular game, I decided to go for a Hydra-based army. I'm pretty convinced that I could have gone for Roger Ravager and had the exact same result, right? So here's the thing. In this particular instance, I scouted my opponent had a bunch of adepts out. I saw that he had 2 gateways out, as well as a third one right here on top of the ramp. Plus, I saw that my opponent had a Stargate, right? Now, if I put these sort of factors together, right? I know he is not going for a ground-based all-in. I mean, I haven't seen any kind of robotic facility. I know he's got a Stargate. He won't be able to support the robotic facility besides the Stargate until he is at least at 3 bases. So I know there's gonna be a bunch of air units and there's gonna be a bunch of ground units, probably from 3 gateways. So I'm making a handful of units right here in between my droning, right? I'm making 4 roaches right here, and I'm making about 10 zerglings, I believe, or I made 6 roaches, I guess. And I'm gonna use those to try and counter any kind of potential ground harassment that my opponent is going for. But I don't want to overmake the units. If I overmake the units, in particular once I know it's phoenixes, I am gonna be losing the game for no apparent reason, and that is why I start droning up once again. The general goal is to try and get all of your bases saturated as soon as you possibly can, before you really start making any kind of army, because at that point you're going to be mining efficiently, you're going to be getting most value out of each drone, and you're going to be able to get simply just more units out later on into the match. So notice, right, I'm still droning up. In this entire game, I think I made 12 or so 12 or so zerglings and 6 or so roaches. And looking back at it right now in the replay, I probably shouldn't have made 6 roaches. I probably could have gotten away with, say, 3 or so. Now, it turns out in this particular instance that roaches also are very good when you morph them to Ravagers. But I'm even going for a fort base, right? I'm trying to get that economy down before starting to make any kind of army. And once again, the reason for that is simply that I need the economy in order to do a powerful attack. So, as you can see, I'm going for the armor upgrade as well as the melee upgrade right now in the evolution chambers. But up to this moment, I've really only been making drones. Now, if you take a look at the income tab, you will see that I am significantly ahead as far as income goes. Like, every minute that goes by, I'm gonna get more and more units out, whereas my opponent is just gonna be sticking on a smaller amount of units, right? Like, you gotta keep in mind, there's minutes going by before we actually clash our armies, and if I'm ahead in that economy count the entirety of that duration, I mean, you can imagine that my army is just going to be substantially bigger than my opponent's will be, right? Now, in this case, I know he's got a Stargate, so I'm like, there could be the off chance that he's going for, like, a heavy kind of, I don't know, say, Void Ray play. So I am going for a switch towards Ravagers, not going for the Roach speed, but instead adding on the Hydralisk down here instead. And once I hit the max saturation, which I already hit a little while ago, that is where I start saving my resources, where I'm starting all my upgrades, where I'm starting all of my unit production, because I then have everything I need to make the army that I was going for. But basically, right, this is why I always comment on people, like, in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game. You're basically making 99% of your mistakes, because in the later stages, honestly, you either should have already lost or you should have already won, right? So really, it's the first couple of minutes where the game is going to be decided, and that is primarily decided by the amount of workers and economy that you're getting. Now, there's a big chance that you're going to be overmaking workers at some point after watching this video, maybe, and you're going to lose the game, and you feel like an idiot because you had no army whatsoever, or you had like 8 Zerglings, you desperately tried adding on some, and then all of a sudden the Protoss overran you, right? It's really important to try and not get demotivated from that one loss. It's very important that you try and prevent that from happening, because everyone has lost games, right? If you want to improve, you're going to have to lose games. I mean, the system is literally made to make you lose 50% of your matches, and if you're too scared to lose, you know, a bunch of your games, obviously you're never going to be improving, right? You gotta make sure you actually play the game, but when you're practicing, try and focus on getting as many drones out as you possibly can, at which point you can start making an army. And you can see it's displayed right now in the supply count as well. It's very clear that I am at a really big advantage, and as far as units go, I mean, I could have gotten away with pure Ling Bane at this point probably and still won the match, right? Like, I could have probably gotten away with maybe even you know, Roach Ravager or Roach Ling or Ravager Ling or whatever. Like, it doesn't really matter, because the economy is where the game was won. The economy is where this victory is decided, and that is honestly true for most of the Zerg vs Terran and Zerg vs Protoss games. So I would highly recommend you get on practicing. I would highly recommend you start figuring out how many drones you can get away with and when you start building army. And if you figure out those two things, you're going to be in a great position to be improving a ton. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button. And if you want to see more content like this, do make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I would definitely like to make more guides like this one in the future. Anyhow, I want to thank you all very much so for watching. Have an amazing day, okay? Do not forget to smile, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!